Good to see you, Kyle.
Hell yeah.
Welcome back to the show, dude.
Great to be here, brother.
Here we go. Bada bing, bada boom. So those of you listening here on the Lifestylist podcast, Kyle and I just recorded me as a guest on his show, the Kyle Kingsbury podcast, and then just turned the mics around and doing the same damn thing right over again, which is a funny way to do podcasting. And I can't wait to dive into this one.
And Luke won't say it, but he was for sure like knocked it out of the fucking park. One of the best podcasts that I've recorded this week, and I've done a shitload of them. As you know, Paleo FX. Thankfully, people realize how much goes on in the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so people get in a little early and stay a little late. And I've been podcasting with Paleo guests since Tuesday, and we'll go to next Thursday.
Really?
So it's drawn out, which is great.
Wow.
But it's still like 14, 15 interviews.
It's a lot.
You know, in a very short span.
Yeah, I just went to a conference in LA, and I did, in 3 days, I did 17 interviews.
Damn, it's fucking 3 days? Wow.
I just sat out on the lawn and just like banged them out one after another. Yeah.
Where was this at?
In Beverly Hills at the Upgrade Labs conference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that like bulletproof?
I think it's what it morphed into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was good. Some of them were shorter, but there were, some full length ones, but yeah. It's fun because you get to a lot of people in one place and do them live, but you also don't really get to experience the event because you're just kind of
constantly
working.
Recording. Yeah.
So anyway, same thing here with Paleo FX. I'll probably not see any of the speakers, but I'll have really dope conversations, and I'll have months worth of podcasts in one weekend, which is amazing. But anyway, thank you for your kind words. That was totally an unexpected conversation we had, but when you talk about plant medicines, I guess unexpected things happen. Just like when you take them. The aftershocks are also sometimes random and unexpected. One thing I remember about you that I always think of when I think of you is that last time we were here and we were doing this recording swap, and then being sort of the, have a difficult time managing time. Time to me is very mysterious. And so when we ended, you were like, what time's your flight? And I'm like, it's in 15 minutes or whatever. And you're like, dude, you are not going to make it if you get an Uber. And you drove me to the airport. And I was thinking, what a cool guy, man. I mean, I have best friends, and I don't think I would drive their ass to the airport. And I just thought that was it was a great way to end the trip. You didn't have to do that. And I thought, that's a cool guy. They say there's two things that friends will do for you. And you have a true friend if they drive you to the airport or if they help you move. Right? Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, it's also been said by a certain wise man that a friend will help you move, but a true friend will help you move a body. Ponder that. Just kidding, kind of. But yeah, thanks for the ride to the airport, dude. And I made the flight, obviously, because here I am back again. So we've already covered your kind of origin story back in episode 155 when you were on my show. So I want to encourage listeners that are kind of jumping into the conversation now. Wait, who is this guy? Where does he come from? What's his background? All of that, because your story is insane and one of the best that I've had on the show. The arc of evolution you've had as a man has been absolutely profound and really, really inspiring. So I encourage people to go back and find out where you came from. So we're just going to skip kind of from that point forward. And where you are right now in your life, what I want to know is, have you discovered in a succinct way what your mission is? Like why you are embodied in the Kyle Kingsbury meat suit, and what are you doing here on the planet? Like what gets you up in the morning?
Damn, that's a good one. I would like to say I don't have a definitive answer for that, and that's because I'm still learning it. And really that just goes back to the one thing that I've kind of grasped, and the concept that I have around, Connor Moore, he started this podcast called The Pleasure Monkey, and it's changed since. But that was based on a trip that he had done to the Amazon with Aubrey Marcus, where Aubrey was talking about basically we are pleasure monkeys. We're these highly intelligent apes that are seeking pleasure at every turn, right? And and I don't believe Aubrey thinks this now, but that was what he had extrapolated to the meaning of life, was to be seeking pleasure. And I thought, no, not at all. That's definitely not it. And I'm not sure what the meaning of life is for me, but one thing I'm sure I'm here to do is to experience and to learn through experience and to continue to learn and grow. So what, if you want to call that ascension or enlightenment or any of these terms, that's fine. I don't necessarily think they're a requirement. It is a requirement that I learn, and I'll learn from anything if I'm paying attention, right? So I could learn from sitting in a fucking solitary confinement box for 30 years. I'm going to learn in the box, right? I'll learn anywhere if I'm paying attention and actually listening. So now it's about really fanning that flame and trying to absorb as much as possible. Obviously, you podcast, so you know this firsthand, but interviewing amazing people really is one of the quickest ways to download valuable information from people and start to put that into practice. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road for me, is to try all this stuff. So, I've been, given this name of the office, guinea pig, here at Onnit, and I try everything on for size and kind of report back how it goes. But lately, it hasn't been like trying biohacks or, I'm still doing that, but that's not the most important stuff. It's really just, how do I draw from the things that I know are working for me? We have access to this stuff called penis envy mushrooms, which is like orders of magnitude stronger than any other mushroom. It's really in a category of its own. We'll be doing ayahuasca in Costa Rica, like you just did, out at Soltara at the end of May for a week. And it's been a couple years since we've done ayahuasca, my wife and I. So, I think that's going to be really powerful. I feel definitely called to the medicine, and ayahuasca is her own thing. She's her own consciousness, and she can help in her own ways. But it's been a big transitionary period right now. We're changing the podcast. We have changed the podcast from the Human Optimization Hour to the Kyle Kingsbury podcast, which is really taken the training wheels off the bicycle and allowed me to have free reign over who my guests are and what I talk about, and that's really great. Also, we'll be bringing on show sponsors, so I will for sure be making more money in that experience, but also taking on full costs associated with it. So it's kind of like I'm a big boy now. I got my big boy pants on, and I gotta be a businessman and an entrepreneur and see what are the other ways that I can take this. So for a while, it's been really about how I manage my mindset and my nerves. And with the uncertainty of life, my monkey mind just becoming rabid and ravenous and really trying to figure everything out. And then, we did this, Aubrey and I did this medicine ceremony last weekend with penis envy mushrooms, where, it was the pink moon, the Libra moon, whatever the fuck that means. And it was all dudes. So, you talked a bit on my show about this masculine and feminine energy. It was all masculine with the guys. And then in nature with the full moon and coyotes howling at the moon and the stars coming up and seeing every fucking star in the sky with no light pollution, like this deep connection to the feminine. And that balance really showed me, this rabid monkey mind and outward thinking, masculine, blah, 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 blah. That's me spinning out of control. If I go, I can feed, the story of the two wolves, who wins, the good or the bad one? It's the one you feed, right? So I can feed that monkey mind and go down the rabbit hole for weeks on end if I want, trying to sort my shit, and I'll never find a solution there. Or I can return to stillness and find peace. And that's really what it's been about for me. So I would say, in all of the learning and with all the uncertainty in life, my priorities for sure lately have been in discovering my own sense of stillness and peace, and really just trusting in the way that this is going to work out, because it always fucking does. It always gets better. It's just in the immediate where I'm like, I don't have this yet, or this went a way that I didn't want it to go. And then I get wrapped up in that, as opposed to, what is this teaching me? And this concept that Aubrey has of using hindsight as foresight. If you look back in time on every challenging event that's happened and see what it gave you, then you can start to believe maybe this is happening for me, not to me, right? And as I embody that, it's like, oh shit, whatever hard thing, whatever challenge I have is going to make me better. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but I don't need to, because I can trust in the record of what's happened in my life thus far. It's always panned out. It's always improved. It's always gotten better. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, is just really enjoying that, taking things in stride, slowing down where I can. I talked with you a bit about being gone more this month than I've been home, and having a son that's about to turn 4. That's pretty tough, because every time I come back, and it could be a week or an 8-day trip, I come back and he's already picked up new things. They learn so quick in that period of time. I don't want to miss it. And every individual trip that I have is something that I'm super thrilled to do. It's just that they're stacked one right after the next, like really stacked. So I think finding that place inside that I call home, wherever I am, has been a really big, important lesson that I'm learning right now in life.
Yeah, I relate to that. It's I think that a life that doesn't include the purpose of learning and evolving makes the difficult times so much more painful. If there's no purpose to it, then you get into that existential crisis of like life is just suffering, and it becomes this really bleak sort of outlook that it's just like a momentary spike of pleasure until you're on to the next bout of suffering. You know what I mean? And then that's when all the self-medicating comes in and all the avoidance of reality, right? Rather than what you're describing as just sinking into the reality, but changing your perception and your orientation to reality and not getting attached to your opinion that this is a good thing, this is a bad thing, etc. And I love that you talked about the practice of looking at your track record of problems that your mind made up that weren't actually problems and that all got worked out. And I just had one of those. It's funny, as you were talking, I packed up all my stuff to fly out here to Austin, and I have a really nice little road case with all my recording equipment, and I always keep all my shit in there. I have my 3 mics, my Zoom recorder, which is the actual thing that captures the audio, have my tripods, my social media setup. It's really great. I've ran around New York City with that thing, a number of different trips I've taken. I record on the fly. I've got it down. So I threw that thing in my suitcase, boom, come to Austin last night, get home to prepare to do some recordings today, and realize that my little Zoom recorder wasn't in there. It's really the purpose of this whole trip is to come out here and use that recorder that I now don't have.
That's the one thing you needed to podcast with people.
It's really funny.
Don't even need the mics. You can record directly from that.
Totally. But there would have been a time in my life where I was like, oh my God, and gotten all pissed off or beat myself up for being so stupid, or, oh my God, I'm fucked now. What am I going to do? And it's because of the track record of so many worse things happening and them still working out. I was just immediately into solution. Okay, where's Best Buy? And I thought, Best Buy, maybe they don't have it. I don't want to drive out there. If I call, I'll be on hold forever. Guitar Center, boom. So I was going to go to Guitar Center after this. I walk in here today. Your guy that runs the show here.
My boy Ryan Giles.
Yeah, I mentioned to Ryan, I was like, oh yeah, funny thing, I've lost my thing. He's like, want to borrow ours for the weekend? Done, problem solved. Dude, I could have been up all night with anxiety, going, how am I going to do these recordings? Guitar Center, what if they don't let me return it? And it's like, I have to remember this moment now in the future times when I'm worried about something. And that is just such a valuable lesson.
Yeah, because all that time spent with anxiety and everything, that can be a valuable teacher in its own right, but it's time wasted. That's the way I look at it. It is time wasted where we're always in control. I forget the Viktor Frankl quote, but I think it's like man's last dominion is the choice of his attitude. Something along those lines. Right. I know I fucking butchered that, but you can look it up, Google Viktor Frankl. It'll be one of the first things that comes up. And so this choice over our attitude is really our choice over our outlook. And the outlook is not even, it's the outlook of the external, but it's really what we choose to feel on the inside about any given circumstance or situation. And in that experience, we always have the fucking choice. Like in one of my favorite movies is Shawshank Redemption, and Tim Robbins is playing the music, and he's like, why'd you do it? When he locks the door to the warden's spot and plays music for the entire jail in the prison. And he's like, he goes, that's always in me. There's something they can't take from us. There's something they can't take from me that always lives inside, and that's it, right? So it's that kind of framework and belief that no matter what, I'm safe. No matter what, I'm okay. And when you start to embody that, any situation can become awesome,
What the hell are penis envy mushrooms?
They are, fuck, dude.
Is that because they're huge? I'm assuming they're like giant psilocybin mushrooms?
Terrence McKenna and Dennis McKenna, I think, created this. They're highly susceptible to mold. So from my understanding is they all have to be grown in a lab, which is an odd thing because, you think of these plant medicines as like, and initially it was very much like, no, only the organic stuff from Mother Earth is medicine, and LSD and MDMA are not. But now I know differently from having very transformative experiences used in a proper set and setting with LSD or MDMA therapy. But so part of me is like, oh man, this is created by dudes and that kind of thing. But at the same time, like, they're in a category of their own. They are at least 2x to 3x stronger than any other mushroom on the planet. I would venture to say they're twice as strong as the strongest mushrooms you've ever had, and 3 times as strong as the most common mushrooms you've had. So Golden Teacher or B+, typical stuff that you'd get if you live on the Pacific West Coast. A lot of that grows naturally, and that's typically what's foraged, and then you might get that from your local guy. These come out of a lab in New York, from my understanding, and to say that they're 3 times stronger doesn't really encapsulate it, because you could have, I've had close to 15 grams of mushrooms before.
Are you serious? At one time?
Yeah, but it's not
dude.
the same as 5 grams of penis envy. Wow. It's not even fucking close. So like that, and that experience truly is something I would say to work up to. It's like if you're getting into this, I don't recommend anybody that they start with that, and maybe you never even finish with that, because so much work can be done with less. But at the same time, I feel very comfortable with this. I have a long experience in using these in a respectful way, with reverence and intention. And I think with that, I feel comfortable going into the deeper, darker places and seeing what comes up. The beautiful thing about penis envy mushrooms, and this is, I did a ceremony with my dad before Christmas last year. He had done ayahuasca with me a couple of times. And as you know now, having done aya, it does take a certain level of awareness and acceptance and surrender to be able to truly work with that medicine. And that's a concept I didn't quite grasp initially, how you work with the medicine, but for sure being comfortable in your own skin, for sure having some type of meditative practice where you can return to your center, or breath work, or any of those practices all pan out very well in a challenging experience. Also, with ayahuasca, you take 1 cup at a time, and it's usually not until the 2nd or 3rd cup that you truly can have that blast off, mystical experience that people talk about who are fans of ayahuasca, like myself.
Yeah. A Nerf baseball bat to the head. Yeah.
So my old band had done a couple of ceremonies with me, and a couple more without me. But at every turn where he had the opportunity to go deeper, he really struggled with letting go, and really struggled with the need to be in control. And he really feared what other people would think about him his whole fucking life. He's almost 70 now. And so given the opportunity to have another cup, he would just say no. Or if he did, he would really try to control it and really struggle with that and purge, but not get to that beautiful euphoria that happens when you release into it. And so in talking with him about it, these mushrooms had come on board and been made available. And I told him, I'm like, it's a beautiful thing, because it's 1 dose and it's buckle up. Like, you are forced to surrender. There is no other way through it. Like, there's no, all right, we had half the dose down, we're going to have half the dose later. It's like, no, it's all at once. And when it rises to peak, you're there. So it is a buckle up scenario, and release into it as much as possible, because any struggle, they can be unforgiving in a way. And I'm not sure if that encapsulates it correctly, because one of the quotes that I love from Dennis McKenna is, and maybe it was Rick Doblin, but there are no bad trips. There are challenging and hard times in the trip, but there are no bad trips, right? When done properly. Obviously, if you're having alcohol and you're in a party scenario, that can be a bad trip. But when you're doing it correctly in the set and setting, and everything's been ironed out, and you have the intention, you have a great guide or a great shaman with you, there is no bad trip. You might relive some trauma, but it's going to be for you, not to you, right? Just like we talked about earlier. So I think having those conversations with my dad really prepped him in a way to be ready for that. And we had about 100 milligrams of MDMA with it. So it was this, and this goes back to the thing that I'm learning right now is, how can I live in love rather than to live in fear? And, many great teachers talk about this. Aubrey talks about it, the guides from Paul Selig, Ted Decker, who wrote The 49th Mystic, Tom Shadyac, who did the documentary I Am, like the list goes on and on. People that I've learned from that resonate highly with me, they talk about this. Like that's kind of the draw here, is the longer I live in love, the greater my life becomes. The more I live in fear, the worse it becomes. And so the same can be said in that experience, the psychedelic experience. And so I kind of got this download, smoking from his dad's pipe, who was gifted to me when my granddad died, with a little organic tobacco. And just the download came in like, hey, let's have a small amount of MDMA with this, so it's led in love rather than fear, because it can be like, holy shit, what's happening now?
Yeah. In my experience, mushroom, and I've not done them consciously ever, but even the weak sauce ones that hippies pick and cow pies and Oregon or whatever can be kind of aggressive. It's got a little bit of tension to it, that sort of. I don't know what the feeling is, but LSD is the same thing. Your cheeks get kind of tight and it's very drying, from a Chinese medicine point of view. It's like, it kind of sucks you up. It's very sort of arid and has that a certain edge to it and a harshness. Like having done ayahuasca now in very much a ceremonial, non-party intentional way, I'm not afraid at all to do ayahuasca again. And I was pretty nervous walking into it because psychedelics are one of those things you can't undo it. There's no antidote. You can't take a bunch of acid and be like, I'm not really feeling this. Can I take the pill to come off it now?
Activated charcoal.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you got to wait it out. But the idea, like when you described the mushroom thing, I'm like, oh my God, that's terrifying to me, just because I think I have had a lot of, I don't say, bad trips per se, but just situations in which I'm 6 hours in going, fuck, why did I do this now? Like our car's broken down and we're at some kegger and I'm stuck somewhere and Slayer's on the tape player. I'm going back to high school, just like really dark bummer situations where you're stuck in a trip and you can't get out of it. And that the harshness of the psilocybin is kind of what I remember. But I also do psilocybin microdosing on a pretty regular basis, to the point where I don't even notice it. I think it's good for you, so I do it. But I'm not like, ooh, I'm feeling more creative today or whatever. I also learned that it's really good for your eyes, and I'm having some problems with my vision. So
Paul Stamets talks quite a bit about that. How it can help with vision as well as hearing. And then it really helped him with his hearing. 2 issues I'm having a lot with.
Yeah. But back to your point on the mushrooms, and I want to go back to you and your dad mixing MDMA with it. This is nuts. I want to find out more about this experience because it makes me think of my dad, and he's pretty conservative, but also he's a seeker, So I'm like, But one thing I did learn about mushrooms, and just as a cautionary tale to people that might be curious about not even having a spiritual experience, but the microdosing thing, is not all mushrooms are created equal, and the strength can vary a lot. And I kind of learned this the hard way because I got a digital scale. A buddy of mine got me, I don't know, maybe like a 1/4 ounce of mushrooms, and I weighed a cap and a stem, and I found out exactly what 0.2 of a gram is, because that's the recommended kind of microdose that won't get you high. I have no intention of like tripping balls when I'm trying to do a podcast or something. So I measured those out, and then would take those just a couple days a week, one little cap, one little stem, and I would just eyeball it eventually because I know what 0.2 of a gram kind of looks like, right? And then I was in your hometown of San Jose at a fucking Tony Robbins UPW, 12,000 hyper-ass people, techno, just very overstimulated environment, and not an environment I feel comfortable in at all. I don't like crowds. I don't like noise. I'm super chill. Like I could just meditate all day in the woods. I'm that guy. And one morning I was really tired, so I took just a little bit extra, just a little. And I remember walking, when you walk in a concert and like you're on the higher level and you walk in, it's like, that thing, it's that rush of a crowd. And I walked into the Tony thing and it's like, just people just freaking out, 12,000 people. I walked in, I was like, I really, really don't like this. I thought, what's the problem? And I was like, oh shit, I'm actually feeling it a little bit. Now, not tripping, but definitely feeling that tension feeling that can come from some psychedelics. And so I just took a walk and went out to the car, and 20 minutes later I was fine. But I was like, oh shit, this is no joke. If you want to effectively microdose, you need to find a way to standardize it. So what I did the next time is I just took an ounce and put it in a coffee grinder and just ground it into a powder. Then I weighed a little scooper that's 0.2 of a gram. So I know that I'm getting a well-rounded dose. And since I've done that, I've never felt it at all and had any negative experience. But if someone's like doesn't have a experience or history with psychedelics and they want their eyes to get better, and they're like, cool, I'll just eyeball some mushrooms, and then you go to work or you try to drive or something, you could have problems. So just a cautionary tale there. But anyway, back to your dad. So where are you guys when you're doing this hero's dose of penis envy mushrooms, and then you decide to sprinkle in some MDMA to the experience? Like, are you in someone's house? Are you in the desert, in the woods, or what?
We were in a house. It was nighttime. We were on some mats. We had a beautiful playlist which featured, Parangi's first ayahuasca album and some Icaros from Shipipo Shaman and different things like that to really set the tone and draw us in. And a lot of the tracks had no lyrics. And if any of the tracks had lyrics, they were very uplifting. There's a really cool album that Paul Chek set me up with, where it's just children singing these spiritual songs from all traditions. So they sing rad. Hindu songs, Christian songs, Muslim songs. I mean, it's fucking bananas. But 16 kids in a choir singing hallelujah while you're on the medicine, like that'll fucking pull you in. So we had a really good playlist, and and that doesn't compete with somebody actually singing live and the Icaros and really that language of the Amazon and how they work with ayahuasca, but it's the best we could do because I don't know those things. And he put it this way. He said that ayahuasca prepared him for this experience, not the other way around. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's how powerful it was. It was the deepest, most powerful experience of his life. I had also gotten the download because I knew he wanted that to scale back and to not blow the rails off, because the truth is you don't heal everything in a single night. And as much work that can be done in one good night, there's still more work to be done. So making him a fan of the experience would allow him to come back to that when he was ready. But fucking blowing the rails off too far, he might be afraid to come back, right? So thankfully the dose was perfect. He only had 3 grams of penis envy is a very substantial amount, but that was the right dose for him to really ride that fine line between almost too much and just right. And it allowed him to practice surrender and letting go and not needing to be in control. And my wife and I were really at different times coaching him in different ways, and not a lot. You don't want to be outward. If he's listening to my voice, he's not receiving downloads. So if I'm just chatting his ear off, he's not going to be getting the downloads he can. And same for myself. So really it was about periodically checking in, and he would shake pretty violently every now and then, and I just let him know, like, hey, just let that energy move through you, just breathe through it. And he had purged a few times, and I've never seen anyone purge off mushrooms, but purga happens when you need it, not when you want it, right? And he had some deep shit to let go of, and it was super funny because we had a bucket, and I could tell when he was going to. I could feel it. I could feel the energy shift, and I was like, you might want to sit up and grab your bucket. And he's like, no, I'm fine. And then he'd fucking lean over and
last words,
turn inside out, as good as any ayahuasca purge I've ever heard. And I was just like, I just put a smile on my face because it's like, fuck yeah, get it, Dad, get it.
Yeah.
And I could feel it come on before he could, because I was just tuned into him, and I'd be like, you might want to lean up again. And he's like, no, I got the message. That was his famous last words before going again and really getting it. But yeah, full body sweats. In many ways, and for people who haven't done this, so like, why the fuck do you want to do that? It's like, well, you're performing psychic surgery in a lot of ways. And I think there was many takeaways. One of which was my great-grandmother, his grandmother, his mom's mom, Mo, was really spiritual. And she gave him a book when he was young. I think he was like, I don't know, he's pretty young, but she gave him There Is a River by Edgar Cayce, and talked about the Akashic records and all this shit with him, right?
Jeez,
and this was in a time, where they were up in the Pacific Northwest. And for anybody who watched Wild Wild Country with Osha, that's right down the street. It's not far from where they were. So very traditional, conservative people that lived there, very Christian. So she was really dipping into the waters of the spiritual that in my opinion now flow right in context with that, but to people who hadn't been taught those things are very much against the church's beliefs. And so for him to get those downloads early was really cool. And he had always assumed that his mom, Nana, my grandma, and Mo's daughter, was in the same light, because Mo had given him all this information and he was very receptive to it. And he got into transcendental meditation early on and lots of cool stuff. But, you know, now that Nana's getting ready to pass, the more conversations he's had around death with her, the less confident she is. And that's really started to impact my dad. Like, fuck, maybe I don't have this figured out. And, you know, maybe it does just go black. And there was a lot of fear around that. But what he discovered in the ceremony, which is, I think, a pretty typical trip report if you go deep enough on ayahuasca or mushrooms, is that you realize very quickly, whatever consciousness is, whatever soul is, I'm not my body. And when my body dies, I go on. And I don't know what happens after that. Some people get the downloads of reincarnation or different things, or they're shown different, you know, we talked about different planes of existence and dimensions that you can operate at. Maybe they're shown those different levels. And there's so much. I mean, to try to grasp infinity with our human brain is impossible in many ways. But to catch a glimpse of that, and to know with every fiber of your being that when my body dies, I'll still be here, wherever here is. That's a pretty cool thing. And that's what he had. So it reminded me of the what would that be called? It reminded me of what they were doing at Johns Hopkins, where they had the terminally ill cancer patients go through a psilocybin experience. And
I really don't know about that.
Yeah, 80% of them no longer feared death.
Oh, wow.
And for different reasons, but 80% of them no longer feared death. So they were going to die no matter what. Well, we're all going to die no matter what, but they were going to die quickly no matter what. And however long they lived, whether it was 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years, they were able to enjoy the remaining days of their life. And that's pretty fucking powerful. So for my dad to really get that download, I mean, I couldn't ask for a better scenario. I mean, because now he really, you know, he believes and he knows and he has that confidence. And there's no, again, just going back to, am I living in love or am I living in fear? I think as we approach death, and it can come up for us at any point in our lives, even as young people, but that would fucking suck to live out the remaining years of your life in fear of darkness or in fear of separation and fear of loneliness and no love or non-existence, right? And for him to be able to live in love and to know that I mean, whether it's true or not, I'd rather live that way, right? Right now, I'd rather live that way. I'd rather live in love.
Yeah, that's the idea of believing in God. You know, it's like, well, can you prove God? Not in one way, no. But life's just, for me, a lot better when I believe. You know, it's like, why not be happier and feel like there's a purpose to everything in the universe, and that there is a karmic and dharmic sort of larger plan at play. And who knows, maybe that's a figment of the imagination. But man, it sure makes life a lot more enjoyable to have that framework. Yeah. And when you mix the MDMA with these crazy lab shrooms, what inspired you to do so, and what did that add to the experience that wouldn't have been present just with the mushrooms alone? Yeah,
well, MDMA is really heart opening, and you know, from like a metaphysical standpoint, you know, if you think of like chakras and energy systems and things like that, heart opening means, you know, like if we live in our heart space, we feel more, we're more intuitive, and we're less frantic with the wavering mind, right? And then if we're living in our head space, there's one of my favorite stories from the Amazon is from a guy named Kerry who guided me in a 3-night ayahuasca ceremony, and he'd worked a lot with Gabor Mate. So he was a licensed therapist as well. They started the facility New Way Rao, and then gave it to the Amaringo family. So if people Google ayahuasca art, a lot of that's Pablo Amaringo. Like, it's very beautiful art from the Amazon. And so the Amaringos basically taught them to be curanderos and take the medicine out to the world. So I got to work with this guy, and he was fantastic. But what he talked about when he was living among the Amaringos was the elders would come and have story time. And they talked about how when the storm comes, monkeys don't climb to the treetops. They return to the roots where it's safe. They go to the base of the tree where they know they're safe. But what do we do when the storm comes as humans? We go right up to our fucking head. We go to the top of the tree where the storm is hardest, and we try to sort the storm out in our mind, which is the dumbest shit. That's the worst place to be.
And your
right?
mind is creating the storm to begin with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Right? So returning to your center, to your heart space, and living in love, that's the move. How you get back to your roots and get grounded and feel the fucking earth on your feet and be in a natural body of water. All those things can center you, right? So I think the idea behind the MDMA was, an MDMA will push you towards love. I mean, I think a common complaint around people who would use MDMA in a party scenario is like, fuck, dude, I told all these people how much I loved them and I don't really love them. The next day they're looking back on that and they're like, damn it, I was way too much in love. And I was saying some shit that I never should have said. And now like 15 people have my phone number that I don't want to have my phone number, whatever the case is. But, so you have to know how to work with the medicine, right? Again. Yeah. So I think in that context, certainly with what MAPS is doing for PTSD and things like that with psycho-assisted therapy, it works. There's no doubt it does. That's why the FDA has fast-tracked it. So I think having that...
They fast-tracked MDMA in like a clinical therapeutic setting?
As a breakthrough drug. And they actually are going to put it, from what I've heard now, as soon as the end of the year and as late as 2020, there will be grandfathered in people who are allowed to work with the therapy right now before it passes through phase 3 trials, which is fucking bananas when you think about that level of efficacy. Yeah. Nothing can touch. And this is 3 doses over the course of a year. It's like every 3 months. So 9 months, they have a dose once every 3 months. And these
are vets and people with severe trauma,
right? And I think what's cool too is Rick Doblin's pushing for this for people who, regular people that really do want to just, have a different outlook on life. So anyways, sidetracked on that note, but knowing all this stuff about MDMA and the power of it, to really open up the heart and just to lead in love. So my dad could sit with those emotions and feel love rather than to have the fear of what's coming up.
Right.
It in a way chemically allowed him to get the most from the medicine, in my opinion. And from a spiritual standpoint, I saw it everywhere. I mean, I saw it in my vision. So for people that are familiar with the experience, I mean, for people that aren't, this is going to sound fucking weird, but for people that are familiar with those experiences, all the sacred geometry started coming in with the Icaros from the Shipibo. And as it was coming in, I saw pink hearts like interlaced into this giant kaleidoscope. And I was like, oh, what are those pink hearts? I've never seen those before. And I realized that was how MDMA, with the spirit of MDMA, was showing up to me in the vision, this beautiful synchronicity and intertwinement in what they call in the streets hippie flipping, Molly and mushrooms. And it was fucking beautiful. I mean, the whole experience was beautiful. So, and really that came to me in meditation and working with tobacco, which is, traditionally called the great communicator. It's what connects us to our ancestors and what allows us to get downloads. From a scientific Western medicine standpoint, nicotine fits in the exact same receptors of the brain as acetylcholine. So it is the greatest nootropic on earth.
Interesting.
And that's exactly why, every fucking nootropic on planet Earth, including Alpha Brain, which we sell, is trying to uprate acetylcholine and downregulate the enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine. And that's it. More acetylcholine and for longer, right? But nicotine is the key that fits in the exact same lock in our brains and just turns it on. That's why musicians and writers and artists will chain smoke, or it's a muse. It jogs the mind, right? So that's usually where I'll get my downloads before deciding upon dosing and things like that, is tapping in, getting still, being in nature, and using a little tobacco ceremonially.
Yeah. My friend Tim yesterday gave me a spray, like an under the tongue, a sublingual nicotine spray, whatever, 5 milligrams. And I was like, I used to smoke. I was like a diehard smoker, cigars, cigarettes, dip. I had a hard ass time quitting nicotine because I used it so compulsively. I was just always sick and it's just horrible. But I thought, what are the chances of me am I going to go smoke a cigarette because I had a little squirt of nicotine, But he was explaining a little bit of the benefits because I've always been like, I don't want to start smoking, so I just don't touch nicotine. But I got to say, I felt pretty fucking great yesterday. And I came here to do a podcast, and I found it pretty opening. And when I did it in ceremony with the up the nose, the, what do they call it? Hape? Yeah. Not a pleasant experience in any of the times I've done it, which has been, I guess, 5 times. But it did clear the shit out of my mind, where I was just like, oh, wow, I'm super present. And meditating on the nicotine is pretty crazy.
It's powerful medicine.
Right?
Yeah, and hape is one of the most powerful forms of it.
Everything is just crystal clear. Now, unfortunately for me, there's quite a bit of nausea associated with it, but still, it's worth it in the right set and setting. Back to the MDMA, something that is always a bit disconcerting to me about dealing with, pharmaceutical lab stuff like that is the purity factor. I know a lot of people, I only took ecstasy once, and I had a really horrible experience with multiple police officers that night. So it was not a lovey.
That sounds like a great story.
Yeah, it was, 2 run-ins with cops, a police chase, high-speed chase. It's not cool. I thought I was just going to go, I took it with the girl, we were going to go party. I thought I was just going to get laid, to be honest. I was like 23 or something. And we ended up just getting everyone got arrested.
Bonnie and Clyde.
Except me, I walked home because I was the only one they didn't arrest for whatever reason, which is weird. Yeah. I win. Fuck you, LAPD. Anyway, negative experience. The high was good, but the next day, dude, I felt like I mainlined crystal meth for a week. I mean, my neurotransmitters, I was so suicidally depressed. I could not smile. I couldn't laugh. I couldn't summon the most minute amount of joy. And I thought, God, it felt like it had speed in it or something like that. And so that really turned me off to it. And the police didn't help either. But if you want to go,
yeah, I can talk a bit about that.
If you want to have an intentional experience with MDMA, how does one even procure something that's pure and isn't going to tank your neurotransmitters and give you all those negative side effects?
So I definitely, especially being a dad, don't want to give away too much information here.
Sure, yeah.
I will say that the source that we had at that time is 100% pure, and it's made in the U.S.
Oh, got it.
And has been third-party tested.
So you know what you're getting.
Yeah. And so,
whereas
and to speak to that, I did a lot of ecstasy in college. I'd shove pressed ecstasy tabs in my poop chute and keister them before going out because they're $20 a pill, and I wanted to get the most bang for my buck.
Right.
That certainly has some serious repercussions on neurochemistry, and I think a lot of pressed ecstasy tabs are cut with uppers to keep you awake longer and make you go. And that's a lot of where people having issues with overheating and heat exhaustion and dehydration come from. Like you're at a rave, you're dancing all night, you're not hydrating enough, and you have all these other chemical components within it. Certainly that can be an issue, but Rick Doblin, I asked Rick at a MAPS conference why they don't include things like 5-HTP and melatonin and all these different add-ins, vitamin C, SAMe. They all help with that come down if you can have a loading phase prior to the ceremony and then after. And he said, with the FDA, they simply can't do that. They can't do it because they have to make it about the MDMA. So you can't have a vitamin C protocol or 5-HTP protocol that goes along with it. And I was like, okay, that actually makes sense. It's like, do you find people that are doing this in the psycho-assisted therapy have any issues? And he said, no, because they're not out dancing. They're taking it in the morning, so they're able to go to bed on time. The MDMA wears off long before they go to sleep at night. They're not losing sleep, which is a massive component.
Very good point.
Neurochemistry. Sleep is more important than fucking any nootropic when it comes to how your cognitive function is going to behave. It has to do with, are you getting quality sleep? So, and then also, they're laying down, they have a blindfold on, they're listening to really good music, and then they speak when they want to speak. So, in that experience, it's not taxing. And then the following day, they highly recommend people spend time in nature. They're not going to work. It's typically done on a weekend or a Friday, and then they have a day or two to relax and unpack and journal. And, again, rest, and then hydrate, and then get more sleep. And then, from there, it's a very quick recovery, and most people don't experience any of those side effects. So I found that very interesting. New Mood is a shameless plug. New Mood's a product we carry that used to be called Roll On, Roll Off. And everything here is born out of necessity. So
that's funny. I didn't know that. I love that New Mood. That stuff's great.
Rolling, obviously. Yeah. Roll On, Roll Off was created specifically to help with that hangover.
That is funny.
And now it's, New Mood is just about having a positive mood. It's really beneficial for sleep, and I take it every night for sleep. But we'll double up on that in the days prior to using MDMA, and then the days that precede it. And there's really no issues.
Cool. That's a great hack. Yeah, that's good to know. And I think a lot of people that I know that have had negative experiences, everything you just described played into that. I didn't even think of the lack of sleep Like you're taking it at 11 p.m. right, and you're up until 10 a.m. the next morning. Like that whole bummer of watching the sunrise when you're still up, and just oh god, yeah. I think those are the nauseating memories that many of us have that would dissuade us from doing it in a more conscious way. So that's very cool. Really interesting stuff. You got me thinking now. Like, maybe I'll do some today. No, I'm just kidding.
Let me know. I got
one thing. Yeah, I'm like ayahuasca's cool. It's funny, dude. Still thinking the ideas I said of just doing mushrooms in a mega dose like that is terrifying to me, just because I have experience with that. I think ayahuasca was less scary for me because I had no idea what it was going to be
nothing
like.
to compare it to.
Yeah, and there was, no matter what, there was no prior experience, so anything was new, even if it was difficult or challenging or in any way negative. At least I wasn't expecting it, so I was able to walk in just completely newbie status, which assisted me in just rolling with whatever came up, which, as I said, was largely pleasurable for the most part. Recently, from following you on Instagram, by the way, follow, was it Kingsbury?
Yep, Kingsbu.
Yeah, so follow Kyle Kingsbury on Instagram. I looked at a hunting trip that you recently went on. I'm just going to take a turn here. I'm curious about what that experience was like. What motivated you to do that? Have you done it prior? Having been exposed to hunting a lot as a kid, I don't think I didn't shoot any large game. I used to shoot little shit and just leave it there, which is kind of uncool in retrospect. But my dad was a big game hunter, for most of my life, and now is kind of a retired hunter. But it was always a really challenging experience for me. However, being an adult and having been a vegetarian for 10 years, which I just for health reasons eventually stopped doing, I have wrestled with the internal hypocrisy that I feel, where I feel so much better when I eat animal products, but I can't say that I'm prepared to go out and kill it myself, and I feel like a total hypocrite and pussy for that fact. And I mean pussy as in pussycat. Female listeners, go look up the origins of that term. Don't DM me and call me a misogynist, because the term actually comes from acting like a kitty cat. It has nothing to do with being a female. I get shit when I use that word, and I finally looked it up. I was like, you know what? I'll fucking say pussy as much as I want. My show says explicit next to it.
Pussy.
But seriously, yeah, I mean, usually that word has a real affinity in the minds of men. But anyway, I feel this internal sense like, God, I really should be hunting if I'm going to eat meat. That's the bottom line. And I don't, because no one invites me, or I don't know people that hunt. So what's your whole deal? I think I saw you like with your hand on a boar. It appeared to be.
Yeah,
it was not a deer. So give me the whole hunting spiel and what that was like.
Yeah, so let's see. My dad is the oldest of 5 kids. He has 2 younger brothers, and the 3 of them would always go hunting, sometimes with rifles, oftentimes with bows. And my granddad would always be there, and they'd take me along when I was super young, but it was basically a camping trip. I was so young for me. We'd stay around. They'd get me up at the crack of dawn with them, and I'd eat eggs with them and kind of hang around. Sometimes I'd go out with them and be quiet, but most of the time I was just at camp. And I always knew it was something I wanted to do, but playing football growing up, like I always had a primary focus from athletics. So football was the focus, and that didn't really lead into me being able to practice shooting with a rifle or bow hunting or any of that stuff. And then my fighting career. And then when that finished, I hadn't really thought much about it. I am a meat eater. I love it. I want a deeper connection to the animal that I'm eating, but there wasn't a real priority there. And then, obviously Joe Rogan really popularized that and talked about his hunting trips. He also talked about archery in a way that made a lot of sense to me, like this. So I'm constantly looking for ways that activities I can do that really stretch across different areas of my life I want to perfect. So, I know how to meditate quietly in a room in darkness or out in nature. But if I can do Tai Chi, then I can actually move energy through my body and breathe and tie the breath work into it. And it's a different feeling. Also, how do I hack a flow state? So what I found is actually bowling with my son, who loves bowling, has been really instrumental in that, because I can't think, if I'm going to bowl well, I can't think about anything else. And I actually have to time my breathing to the bowling. So I take a deep breath when I'm lined up, and then I'll slowly exhale as I go through my shot in bowling. Same thing goes when I'm doing archery. And so I got into, I'd been following John Dudley and different guys that are pretty prominent in the space as archers and hunters, and I listen to Rogan's. And I found out when I got here to Onnit that John Dudley was an Onnit sponsored dude. And I was like, fuck, somebody get me his contact right now. So I got his email and I wrote him and I'm like, dude, I'm a huge fan, but listen to you on Rogan's. I want to get into archery. Is there a time when you're going to be in Austin? And he had just done, he sold 3 bows at a, custom made bows for different people at to the highest bidders as a donation for Hurricane Harvey relief in Houston. And he was going to be out here in Austin at Archery Country, which is a local archery spot. And so he's like, dude, I'm gonna be in town. Let's do each other's podcasts and we'll get you set up. And I was like, fuck yeah. So he comes in, jumps on the podcast. We have a great time. The next day he's at Archery Country and he's giving these 3 bows out to the highest bidders as a donation to help with Hurricane Harvey relief. And he custom makes me a fucking bow. Now this happens to be my 36th birthday. Custom makes me a Hoyt and hands it to me and says, happy birthday. And I'm like, damn, son. And so, of course, people are writing me online like, you just gave a 16-year-old a Ferrari. He doesn't even know how good it is. And I'm like, fuck off. Right. So that was my first experience with getting a bow. And then he spent, the next 48 hours giving me private lessons at Archery Country, which is, if I have any skill in shooting, which is, I'm a white belt at this, maybe a blue belt, it's due to John Dudley. So really I had, this crash course on how to shoot, how to prep, how to quiet the mind. And in going through those steps, because we talked about on my podcast, what's important now, that acronym, right? So if I come across an animal in real life, my heart starts racing. What's important now? Well, let me get in the right position. Let me make sure I'm not seen. Let me wait to take the shot so that it's the right shot so I don't injure the animal but not kill it. All those things are you can make it systematic, and then you don't have to think of, oh my God, it's right here. Just actually going through the steps necessary and then taking the shot it makes it a lot easier because it's systematic. So I had wanted to hunt, for some time. And now that I had a bow and was able to practice, I really wanted to go on a hunt. And Ben Greenfield had reached out to Aubrey and I to go in 2017, but we had a lot going on with Aubrey's book launch and couldn't do it. So, or 2018 rather. And then so this year came around and end of last year, Greenfield started planning a trip with Aubrey and I. And we were looking at all, sorts of cool places to go, like Argentina and a lot of different places. But, a lot of those countries don't let you take the meat home. And it's still eaten, like you could give it to the tribe or the local people there and they get to eat, and then you can, feed a community. But it being my first hunt, I wanted to take this meat home and have it for myself, and my family and my tribe. So, we looked at some less exotic places, still fucking beautiful. We went to Hawaii and I hit up my buddy Kyle Tierman, who's hunted in Hawaii a number of times. And he has some really cool local guides that he works with, born and raised Hawaiians that have been hunting their whole lives. And he's actually had them on his podcast. And I was like, I resonate with these dudes. Let's do it. So Tierman really put this whole thing together. And it was, and I feel bad because Aubrey didn't get to go. He had Rogan in town and really needed to focus, on it and getting content with Rogan. And they had a beautiful podcast and all that. But, he still sent me on my way. And we started on Big Island. We hunted boar, we hunted goat, and we hunted ram. And then we finished up on Maui hunting axis deer. And Rogan always talks about axis. They're from India. They evolved to escape from Bengal tigers. They're one of the fastest deer. Incredibly intelligent hunters, or prey rather, incredibly intelligent. Very hard to come up on. And one mistake, as I found out, they're fucking gone. But there was so many lessons that got trickled in. First of all, you're hunting in paradise, so that's really nice scenery, and then we're up at 4 a.m. So before the sun comes up, we can watch the sunrise, and that connection to nature while you're in the hunt was something that was incredibly beautiful. Also, you can't really talk when you're hunting. You're not like having a fucking conversation. You're in silence, right? So like,
there's a theory that that's why men don't talk, because we have 2 million years of evolution of shutting the fuck up so you can go get dinner.
Yeah, right. That makes
Right?
sense, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like that for me was such a visceral way to embody peace and quiet time and stillness. And you know, we did spot and stalk, where we're looking through binoculars, finding them, then slowly, painfully slowly moving through the terrain to get close enough to take a shot, because it's not like a rifle. I can't just spot it at 100 yards and say, or 200 yards and say, all right, I got you.
How close
You know?
do you have to be to get a solid kill shot?
Well, and that just
Or
really
it
goes
depends
back.
on the animal?
It goes back to skill set, right? So there was guys that I was with, you know, like Dr. Peter Attia, who I was a huge fan of, still am. Now has become a friend of mine. He's accurate from 73 yards. You know, because he's used to shooting at that. He's got a target in his backyard. It goes at 73. So he's dialed in at 73. For me, I have a range, an indoor range that's at 20 yards. So I'm really good at 20, and then past that is a little iffy. But you know, I feel comfortable anywhere between 60 and closer. But that you're still getting pretty close to the animal. You know, if you make a noise at 60 yards, they're going to spot you. So not boar necessarily, but certainly with axis deer and the rams were pretty damn intelligent too. But yeah, so we had like this, you know, first of all, we're with great guys. The conversation is fucking amazing. Everyone there has a podcast. Everyone there is on the path and you know, into health and wellness and some form of, you know, everyone has their particular specialties. You know, Kyle Tierman's a big wave surfer and an environmentalist, and Dr. Chris Ryan's there, who wrote Sex at Dawn. And it's just a fucking, I've learned from all these people. So the conversations at night were incredible. And then, you know, sleeping in a single person tent and going out we each had our own guides. So it was pretty much pairs of two going out into nature and getting still and being quiet, either spot and stalking or getting in the right place and waiting. And both of those experiences were really powerful, because the spot and stalk, you have to be quiet as you get close, but you also have to gain ground. And there was so much I learned at every angle, but you know, I was thankfully able to kill an animal and harvest it. And second only to my son being born, I mean, I felt a fucking wash that started up my head and went to my feet of gratitude. My hands were buzzing. My hands were shaking when I killed this boar at 20 yards. And I just felt gratitude, like through everything. And that's why I came over and put my hand down on it and took a knee and prayed for the life of that animal and thanked it, really, because, you know, and that is the argument. When people start doing plant medicines, things like this, a lot of them turn vegan. And I don't know if I'm getting a different vision than you are, but I have had visions around this. And the truth is, life takes life. And, you know, they talk about this in Sapiens. It's a great book.
I'm halfway through that
right when he
epic audiobook. I'm like, when's this thing over? It goes on. I think it's like 12 hours.
It's amazing. But he gets
fantastic.
into all the different religions when they came up, right? And the first thing he talks about is animism, which is one of the oldest religions or spiritual things. But animism is believed by many Native Americans and many South Americans who work with plant medicines. But it's this idea that everything is animated. And whatever soul I have, that's in the plants, it's in the mountains, it's in the earth, it's in Venus, it's in the moon, it's in the sun, it's fucking everything is conscious, right? So that has been made very, very viscerally understood for me from ayahuasca and deeper mushroom ceremonies, where I've seen trees communicating with one another and things like that. It's been shown to me like, oh, hey, this is consciousness as well, right? And so I was shown the vision in particular, where I was asking about, because I had a lot of people saying like, dude, you should quit eating meat. And I knew better from a health and wellness standpoint, but I was like, is that right? And that question came up to me in ayahuasca, and I saw a panda bear chewing bamboo. And I literally said in my mind, fuck, am I going to go vegan? And then I saw a black bear eating berries. And then I really thought, panic, I'm not eating meat anymore. And then I saw a grizzly snatch a salmon out of the water. And it was Mother Earth saying, take from me, take what's natural. You know, like the closer it is to what I've created for you, the better it is for you. But everything is conscious, everything is alive, and life takes life. And the more living our food is, the better it is for us. You know, like a sashimi wild caught salmon that was caught, and I don't even know, actually, maybe you can't do that. Maybe you can't do sashimi salmon, but something that's not overly cooked, that's very fresh and wild game is going to be much better for you than eating something that's been shelf stable in a bag in a grocery store for fucking 2 years, right? One food is dead, one food is alive, right? But all are conscious. So there's no, it's not about what's better, what's right or wrong. It's about, do I have a connection, and am I respectful of the fact that I have taken a life to stay alive and to be sustained? And so all those emotions went through me as I had killed this boar. And I really just felt such a deep connection to it. And I felt so much gratitude knowing that it was going to provide for me, but for my family, and also for those that I call my tribe, you know, the people that are closest to me. And it already has been that. You know, I crock potted a big piece of the butt, and we drained it, pulled it, mixed in some sauerkraut and some really good seasoning, and had some side veggies, and it was a beautiful meal. And we all held hands and made a prayer for it. And you know, Bear led the prayer. My little 3-year-old said, "Thank you, God, for this food," and that was it. It was so simple, you know. But thank you for the life of this animal that we're about to eat. And every bite, it was very visceral, the amount of gratitude that I had, because I know like this is something that will sustain us. And I did have a very real connection to that animal when I killed it. And thankfully it was a very clean kill. You know, it didn't take long. It was shot right through the heart. And that was a beautiful thing to see as well.
So when you walk up to this boar, it's not still panting and suffering. It's already checked out and left its body.
Yeah, that was it. Then that leads me to my next kill. So, like I said, many lessons, and I get to see the full spectrum of what hunting looks like. Obviously there's fucking much more to learn, the depth of which I don't fully understand yet, but I had a shot on a sow, and I didn't realize it was a sow at the time, but there's a boar and a sow and then 2 piglets. It's a family of 4. And I'm like, fuck, man, I'm a dad. I'm trying to have my next kid. We're trying right now. It's like, damn, I'm going to take a parent out right now. And the way I kind of wrapped my head around that was, we are the only known natural predator here. They don't have a natural predator. That's why pigs are an issue in Hawaii. They're a real issue. Even the deer are a real issue environmentally. And I can get into that more, but just to know, like, those piglets are going to grow up fine. They don't have a predator that's going to take them out. And so the pigs are all moving, and they're not moving quickly, but they are moving. So it's a moving target. And I'm out at about 43 yards. And I lead the pig by about a foot, what I estimate to be a foot. And it hits maybe 3 inches back behind the vitals. And it was making like the worst squeals. And I had to come up on this thing with my guide and my buddy JR. He's like, "Are you feeling primal?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, give me the knife," because I didn't have my knives on me. Also a rookie mistake. So he hands me his buck knife, and I have to hit this sow through the heart to help it pass away, because it was not going to die soon. It was going to bleed out for a long period of time. God. And I mean, it was like just going. And and so I put my hand on it and went through the heart with this long knife, and I held it in there for a while, and then I pulled it out, and I mean, another 90 seconds went by with it, like, kind of, this is graphic for people, so I apologize, but, you know, breathing in its own blood and really, you know, running in place on its side and trying to escape. And then it finally passed. And that taught me so much, because it's super easy when you get the clean kill, you know, but that was like, fuck, man, that lit a fire into my ass to be better at hunting, to be a better shot, so I don't have to go through that again. You know, and to not take the shot that I'm uncertain of, you know, and it changed the rest of my hunt, because there was many opportunities where I had a chance at hitting the animal, but it wasn't a very clear, clean shot. Maybe there was a branch in the way, or the animal was moving. or if it was looking at me rather than eating, then I know it could have moved by the time it heard, the follow through. So all these things factored in, and I didn't take a whole lot of shots after that. I still took shots. But that taught me a lot right there too, like, shit, okay, I got to get better at this. And, again, super deep connection, but also feeling that call to be good, to not be shitty at what I'm doing here, because it does matter.
It's so heavy, man. And as you're telling that story, I'm like, oh my God, I can't. I mean, I know that there's a lot of things that I've experienced and been through that I didn't know that I could make it through unscathed, so to speak. But psychologically, there's such a difficult. I have such a difficult time getting around that, even though I eat bacon almost every single day, but I don't have to see the process that you just described to get my bacon. And that's where I feel this internal, I mean, it's not something I ponder on a lot. I mean, I'm like, listen, it's me or them kind of thing. Like, I don't feel good when I eat kale. Like, I need some fucking bacon. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Not to be cold about it, but I do feel a sense of responsibility to be part of the ecology that I'm taking from. I'm taking from it from a monetary standpoint, and I'm giving money for someone else's hard work that's going and doing the hunting or the farming or whatever it is. When I was a kid, I had experiences like that where, they would be on a hunting trip hunting bear with my dad, and they would tree a bear and they'd shoot it out of the tree and it would land half alive. Or one time the cubs lived and we had to put the cubs in the truck, and one of them died, one of them lived. We took the cub home and it was like our pet cub now, because it wouldn't have survived. And a lot of weird shit happened. And I was, California kid, so I was disconnected from my dad's lineage. He had been hunting since I think literally he was like 6 or 7 years old. He was carrying a 22 around the plains of Colorado, shooting everything in sight and eating and skinning everything. And to him, like, I've interviewed him about it, and I'm like, do you ever feel guilty? Do you cry when you see the animal suffering? And he just looks at me with this blank stare, and he's just like, what are you talking about? But he's from a different paradigm in a different era and a different geographic and cultural experience. So to him, the reverence and the gratitude and the connection to the land and to all of the animals and all of the creature is just built into his mental framework. So like, to him, he's not killing something that's like a teddy bear or a cartoon character. It's just, he understands, I think, what you're now learning, and I'm trying to get my consciousness to envelop, is that everything is cyclical, and it's all just an energetic sort of karmic play, and the energy leaves one living thing, goes into another, comes back out. And trying to get a really zoomed out perspective of that. But as you tell that story, I'm like, oh my God, I would be freaking out because I don't want to see something suffer. But here's the dilemma, is like, most of us like watching the Nature Channel, right? Whatever. And you say, like, you're watching the prey and predator in the Sahara. Okay, so let's imagine you've got a pride of lions and they're all stalking some gazelle. I'm always rooting for the gazelle, and then when the gazelle gets taken down and torn apart, I'm like, oh, that poor gazelle, and I just feel this empathy, and I feel sorry for the gazelle. Meanwhile, what about the lions that are hungry? It's like, I should also be feeling sorry for the lion when the gazelle gets away and they miss lunch that day, because they might not catch one for another 4 days, and they're on the brink of starvation or something, right? Yeah. So it's just, I don't know. It's a conundrum of nature that I feel many of us have and are trying to reconcile. Those of us that are conscious, feeling, empathetic beings, like hopefully I am most of the time, but also understanding just evolution and biology and the Paleolithic evolution of mankind, and that we tend to do better, as you said, when we eat off the land. And having tried living off plants for a number of years, I did not do well. So how do I reconcile that? And when I look at it too, what I see in nature is that everything is eating everything all the time. Mm-hmm. Like anytime from you watch top nature, to bottom of the food chain. All that's going on is shit is eating shit. Mm-hmm. Like that's all that happens in nature. And even if you decided, I never want to kill anything and I'm just going to eat plants, well, you have to kill all the bugs and the fungi and all the stuff that makes plant growing possible. Even if you only eat kale, things are still dying. If you drive a car, I just did a road trip and I killed probably tens of thousands of bugs driving down the street. So I thought, well, if I don't want to kill, I can't drive a car. So I'll just walk. Well, no, if you're walking, you're killing bacteria that you're stepping on. You're still killing some bugs that you don't notice. And it's like you literally can't move through time and space without enveloping and killing living entities, no matter how big or small. So then it becomes this value system. Well, if I'm willing to kill a grasshopper that hits my windshield, but I'm not willing to kill a mouse that's in my garage with the mouse trap, but I'm willing to kill a rabbit. Now, rabbits are too cute, but I'll kill a chicken. You know, it's like, who's the one that decides which animal on the food chain is appropriate to kill for your sustenance? And then it gets really complex, you know? And I think the reason it's complex is because, at least in my life, from the time I was born, I wasn't watching chickens getting beheaded in the yard and turning into dinner. It wasn't part of my domesticated upbringing. Whereas 100,000 years ago, no matter what kind of human you were on the planet, animals dying to feed the people around you would be so commonplace. You would literally see it from the very second you were born.
Yeah.
And so you would see a pig lying there suffering, and you just be like, cool, someone take care of that. We need a dinner. You know, it wouldn't be like a cartoon character that you watched on Disney when you were 5, that now you feel like the pig is your friend and it's like a human. It's not a human,
no,
you know?
Bambi.
Yeah, all that stuff. It's a really interesting phenomenon in my own life and culture. And, you know, as I said, going to the farm where I get a lot of my food was as close as I've gotten to it. I held a baby pig that, for all intents and purposes, was likely my bacon that I got at my local butcher, Belcampo, a few weeks later or months later, you know what I mean? And I'm like, this is weird. This thing's super cute. Could I kill this thing and wrangle its neck right now and cut it open and make bacon? I guess if I was hungry enough, but I'd still rather pay someone else to do it. You know, it's the glass slaughterhouse thing, you know? And so it's not something that keeps me up at night, but I don't know. I am thoughtful, and the idea of hunting feels like, in my experience, I have some sort of responsibility at some point to have that experience, whether it becomes something I become, you know, really into and do on a regular basis. But I kind of I feel unintegrous somewhere in there because I have this very disconnected relationship. It's like I want the benefits of the animals in my body becoming my body, their flesh becoming my flesh, but I kind of don't want to see the messy details of that exchange of energy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. And I was surprised because I wasn't sure how I was going to handle field dressing an animal for the first time. But,
oh, dude.
You know, Peter Attia's over my right shoulder giving like the anatomy lesson of the animal, of the boar, as I'm cutting through it. And it was, I don't want to say there was a disconnect. I mean, I have my hand on this warm body while I'm cutting through it and being very careful not to hit the intestines and spill shit everywhere. But it was really powerful, and it was far less gross. Even the smell didn't bother me. Like, it was just like, this is part of the rub for me to eat, is to field dress this and not just have my guide do it. You know, even though my guide helped quite a bit, to be able to do that was one of the pieces of the equation that I really appreciated, you know, because I wasn't certain how I was going to handle that going into it. Never done that in my life. Hadn't even seen it, you know? Dude,
I get grossed out when I unpack a filet mignon from the plastic packaging and I have to touch the slime. I mean, I'm serious. It's embarrassing to admit, but I'm like, like, I don't even like cooking meat or fish because it grosses me out until it's cooked and on a plate and looks pretty and tastes delicious. But
that's hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's like I said, I hate to admit that, but it's the truth. And I know that there's a disconnect with just my basic humanity in that, because of the time and place that I was born in. I was born disconnected from my environment in that way, and interacting in the environment in a way in which I believe humans have naturally evolved to interact.
Yeah. It's good you admit that, though. I mean, so many people go through life without drawing that conclusion or connection. And I'm sure 99% of your listeners have watched the documentary Food Inc. But I think that's a fantastic documentary that really just outlines how we prefer to have this packaged, pretty thing come to us. And how it got to us makes all the difference in the world. You know, I mean, they're adding in dyes to factory farmed salmon to make them more orange because they contain no astaxanthin, you know? Right. So it's like, how do we make it look like coho salmon that has a deeper orange or red? Well, we have to add this dye to it because it simply is nutrient deficient, you know? And then you know, and we vote with our dollar, another great concept they talk about, you know, like, if you're not going to go hunting, that's fine. I'm not saying it's for everyone. Same with ayahuasca. It's not for everyone. But if you feel called to it and you're ready, it can be one of the most beautiful things you could ever do. It certainly was for me. Yo.
Bada bing, bada. That's great. That's funny because I forgot what time we started, and I'm like, I think we're supposed to end around 1. And I looked at my questions, and I thought that's actually a really good note to end on. And then, bing, there you go.
There we go.
As fate has it.
Perfect timing, brother.
Well, thank you for the account of all your psychedelic experiences and the positivity that you've derived from that. The hunt. I covered some really cool stuff that I actually haven't talked much about on the show, and so. It's always exciting to sit down with someone, especially someone you've talked to before, and find out, oh my God, there's so much more to this person, and there's so much more of a story to tell. So thank you so much, dude. Super fun.
Fuck yeah, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, good times. And if you have any of that boar left over, I'm a huge fan of bacon. Keep it in mind. Next Christmas, whatever. But seriously,
I'll send you out some shoulder or some butt.
It's cool.
We didn't harvest bacon, so.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. And it's, it's inspiring. And I feel like I kind of, I missed out on a certain amount of bonding with my dad when he was in his big game phase for 45, 50 years or whatever it was. And now he hunts coyotes because he loves deer and, the ecology thing, which we didn't get into. But I think I might have missed the boat on that era, sharing that with my dad. And so it's something I'm sort of looking forward to perhaps experiencing, so I can have a more full experience of being a human on Earth and really living off the land at least once. So thanks, dude.
Yeah, brother. Thank you.
See you next time.
Alrighty.